Hello, welcome to Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chung, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Let me read you this headline. San Francisco experts describe, quote, perfect storm, end quote, of teen suicides, youth mental health crisis during pandemic. That was November 2020. Have things improved since? Have things gotten better in this country? How are you dealing with the pandemic? Here we are, June 2021, and Anthony Fauci, even though the emails outed him, is playing both sides of the stories, playing fast and loose, loose and fast with the truth. Joe Biden stands by him. So, it's not only a question of how you've been doing with the coronavirus, but it's also a question of how you will continue to be doing with the coronavirus. Because as President Joe Biden indicated, he is standing by Anthony Fauci. So you can pretty much expect that the coronavirus is going to have lingering impacts on Americans' lives well into 2022, 2023. Who knows how long? Who knows how long? That is the question, right? So my guests today are going to put a little faith, inject a little faith into this whole bleak and dark coronavirus, politically charged climate. They actually started a campaign to apply Christian principles to these dark coronavirus times, particularly when it comes to desperate business owners. So I'll have those guests on there in just a few minutes. In the meanwhile, if you haven't subscribed to the Washington Times digital platform yet, I just want to throw this question out there. Why not? What are you waiting for? Right now, Bold and Blunt listeners can go to washingtontimes.com/Cheryl and get a 50% off discount on a year's access to the digital platform of the Washington Times. Look, you'll get all the great news, the great investigative reports, the great commentaries, the great podcasts, not just mine, but everyone else's as well. You'll have a year's access to them. And that means you'll have automatically a year's access to all the information you need to fight the lies from the MSNBC types and the CNN types and the bubbleheads at the NBC and CBS, ABC types. You need the truth. You needed the truth in these dangerous times to fight the socialist takeover of America. If you think that's hyperbole, well, there's another reason why you need to read the Washington Times daily, because it'll show you exactly how the far left is busily trying to undercut the Constitution and usher in not just socialism, but outright communism. WashingtonTimes.com/Cheryl. Go there now. And while you're typing away, while you're inputting your info, take a listen to this.
Psychologist Christine Garcia says on Halloween night, 8 teenagers ended up in a San Francisco emergency room after attempted suicides.
Typical is usually, I would say, 1 or 2 at most, and 8 is an insane number.
Garcia is the director of Edgewood Center for Children and Families in San Francisco. They run 28 different mental health programs and last year helped more than 11,000 Bay Area teens and young adults. The pandemic has led to an influx of referrals, particularly for their inpatient program.
That was ABC 7 News out of San Francisco. 8 teenagers in one evening back in late 2020 due to the pandemic. You know what? We're still not giving the proper attention to these dark after effects, to these aftershocks from the coronavirus. We're still largely ignoring them. We're still putting out Anthony Fauci as an expert, as a Joe Biden stand by my man expert. The same Anthony Fauci that shut down schools and claimed he had nothing to do with that it was all a political decision, but it was Anthony Fauci who pressed the policies that led to the shutdown of the schools, that continued pressing the policies for continued shutdowns of the schools, even in the face of science that showed how ridiculous such school shutdowns were. And it was headlines like this that went largely ignored for so long. San Francisco experts describe perfect storm of teen suicides. It was headlines like that the mainstreamers in the media didn't want brought forward for American citizens to read or hear about. Here's a bit from The Guardian, and this was written in December 2020. People are desperate. That's how the headline started. California shutdown pushes businesses to breaking point. Let me quote from the story. Starts with a personal tale of Lori Thomas. Lori Thomas had high hopes that her restaurant, Terzo, would be able to stay open during this holiday season. Remember, it's December 2020. Her team had been serving its upscale Mediterranean fare from the restaurant's San Francisco sidewalk after adjusting to outside-only dining requirements. But as California saw a dramatic surge in COVID cases in recent weeks, and I want you to think on that, COVID cases, because COVID cases by themselves are meaningless, right? COVID cases mean nothing. What we care about, or what we were told we should care about, are COVID deaths, COVID hospitalizations, COVID fatalities, and percentages of COVID cases in context of COVID fatalities. But somewhere along the line, all those facts and figures and all important contexts got dropped to the side, and in its place came COVID cases. So, back to the piece. But as California saw a dramatic surge in COVID cases in recent weeks, Governor Gavin Newsom issued stricter shutdown orders that again restricted businesses and put an end to outdoor dining. Good Lord. Let me read one more paragraph from this. Now, thousands of newly constructed outside dining parklets across the state, some of which cost tens of thousands of dollars to build, sit empty. This is present tense from December 2020. Restaurants like Thomas's are bracing for difficult weeks ahead. Many of them say they won't survive on takeout and deliveries alone, making another surge in statewide unemployment all but certain. That was The Guardian. In December 2020. Then the narrative changed a bit. Then the story changed a bit in 2021. Then we had this.
On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 211. The motion is adopted.
What was that? Remember that? That was Nancy Pelosi's passage of the landmark $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief bill. House Democrats passed the American Rescue Plan, passed along to President Joe Biden, right? And the idea was that all these out-of-work American citizens would then have money in their pocket to sustain them through the long, lingering, continuing months of coronavirus shutdowns and clampdowns for the safety of American citizens, for the good of everybody, don't you know? As if American citizens needed rescuing, right? The big rescue that government should have done was what they should have done from the beginning. Step back and let American citizens take control of their own lives and determine their own courses of action. Business owners forced to shut down, forced to go on the government dole-out because of fear over a coronavirus. And maybe that narrative was the proper thing to do in the first couple weeks of the coronavirus when nobody knew what it was all about. Maybe up to maybe a month. It was perhaps the safe thing to do. But good Lord, March 2021, and we're still passing $1.9 trillion doleouts to rescue American citizens who really can rescue themselves if only government would get the freak out of the way and leave them alone to go back to work? That's the rescue. That's the rescue that's needed. Government thinks it's rescuing American citizens. Well, who's going to rescue the American citizens from the government? Here, let's listen into this report from 13 News Now.
Well, this pandemic has taken a major toll on restaurants, and a big chunk of this COVID relief package will go to those restaurants. And I talked to some of those owners here in Norfolk who say this is going to be critical in order for them to keep their doors open. At the Nouvelle restaurant along Colley Avenue in Norfolk, this is the reality over the last year. An empty restaurant during lunch. The owner, Luke Brigham, and his wife decided to close during lunchtime as a cost-saving measure they say is critical to avoid a permanent shutdown.
It's been arduous. It's not like we had a bad month where we saw over 70% of our revenue drop off. It's been a solid year like that.
Because of the government. Because the government in certain areas, that was from Norfolk, Virginia, but because the government in certain areas have mandated ridiculous closures, ridiculous, unnecessary, unscientific, as emails from Anthony Fauci can attest, as common sense can attest, ridiculous, unnecessary shutdowns on small businesses. So the government's solution was to pass a multi-billion, trillion, bazillion, whatever, what have you, dollar amount to redistribute money from taxpayers to give to those who have been forced into shutdown mode, right? To create the desperate situation and then swoop in as the big hero saviors of the desperate situation that government itself created. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. 9 most terrifying words in the English language said, who? Ronald Reagan. So that's the situation March 2021. Now look at it. Just Google search on some headlines about the desperation of businesses still a year and a half after the pandemic. A year and a half after we were told the goal was to flatten the curve. Remember that phrase? That's what it was all about, flattening the curve. From CNN, May 4th, 2021, American factories are desperate for workers. You know why? Because the government is actually motivating workers to stay home. The government is actually enabling people to stay home because of the stimulus dollars, giving extra unemployment benefits to the states to pass along to those who don't want to go back to work because, guess what? They make more money by staying home. Joe Biden will come out and make a fancy speech and say, oh, I don't think American workers would do that. They wouldn't take advantage of the system. Really? Really? I don't think anybody believes that, least of all Joe Biden, but sounds great. Sounds great to be carried by the water carriers for the Democrat Party and the media. But the reality is, here's another headline, May 13th, 2021. AP News, desperate for workers. U.S. restaurants and stores raise pay. Another one, Daily Kos. Businesses are desperate for workers. Another one, the Gaston Gazette. Gaston County businesses desperate for workers. That's in May too. Another one, Finance, Yahoo. These companies are hiking wages because they can't find workers, May 13th. And here we go, Newsweek, May 11th. 44% of surveyed small businesses can't find workers to fill their needs. They're desperate. They're desperate for workers. So the government shut down businesses, told everybody in America to stay home, stay out of work. Then the government created ungodly amounted stimulus dollars to give out to those workers that they ordered to stay home. And now the few businesses that are able to open because they live in states run by Republicans. But the businesses that are able to reopen, well, they can't find workers anymore because nobody wants to go back to work because they want to live off of the more money they make from Joe Biden's, Nancy Pelosi's, the Democrat Party's handout. And all the Pauls out there go, thanks, Peter. Thanks so much. Well, it's a sad and sorry situation, and it's one that is not talked about, just like the suicide rate, the desperate conditions of America's youth, the rising depression rates of both youth and American adults, just like all those stories aren't really even being talked about to the extent that they should be talked about. The media spend more than a year ignoring that, and now, every now and then, a story will pop up when it can't be ignored, when, say, 8 teenagers in one evening try to kill themselves in one California area, in one California hospital, when it gets to the point they can't ignore it. But by and large, we're still talking about the pandemic as if it has not passed, as if the curve has not been flattened, as if we're all to stay home and wait for the government to print more money and hand it out. And then that's how we spend the rest of our lives, just waiting for the check to come in the mail. Well, thank goodness that there are plenty of people out there who are fighting this government-imposed socialist system. And their names are Jacob Wells and Heather Wilson. And they created this Christian crowdfunding site called GiveSendGo.com. That's the word give, the word send, the word go, all run together, .com. Why? Well, they wanted to incorporate prayer into their site's business model. And I think there's something so inherently American about that. When Americans are in trouble, they turn to prayer. When Americans want to give thanks, they turn to prayer. It's just in our system. It's in our DNA. And Heather Wilson and Jacob Wells have taken that idea and turned it into a Christian crowdfunding site that goes above and beyond by offering prayer for the beneficiaries. It's prayer outreach on Christian crowdfunding. And they're here on Bold and Blunt to talk about their campaign. So Jacob, Heather, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you, Cheryl. It's great to be here.
So you guys looked back on the year of coronavirus bleakness, and you came up with a very spiritual response. Can you tell people what you did?
Sure. Being a Christian crowdfunding platform, we know that people come on our site to raise money. They found themselves in need of financial help, and so they've come to GiveSendGo to crowdfund and fundraise from their friends and family. And we know money is needed in this world, but we also know as Christians that there's something deeper that every heart needs. And so we say we don't want to just help people raise money. We also want to help people experience the hope that we know is found in Jesus. And so we said when people come on to GiveSendGo, every single person who starts a campaign, they're going to get a phone call from our prayer team. And our prayer team reaches out to campaign owners and says, we're going to pray for you and your campaign. And they make a personal phone call, say, I'm your prayer partner, and I'm here to pray for you. And we have gotten an amazing response from people going, I can't believe a crowdfunding site, a fundraising site is calling me to offer me prayer and support and encouragement while I'm trying to raise money.
So, Jacob, if you can kind of take listeners through sort of the conception of that idea.
Sure. You know, from the very foundation of GiveSendGo, we recognize that, like Heather said, money helps meet the material needs of our world and the world situations that we find, but no amount of money that you raise for somebody that's just lost a child in a tragic accident or is going through, cancer treatments or things like that, no amount of money satisfies the hurt and the longing in those moments. And so as we talked back and forth in how do we take the reality of that and actually make it manifest itself in the world through our platform. And we've always had, or for several years, we've had a Pray Now button on our platform where people could, along with giving, they could click Pray Now. So we had a level of functionality. People could show their support to people in ways other than just giving. But we said, you know what I think that there's a moment here, especially in light of the isolation that our country has been involved in as a result of coronavirus and the lockdowns and a lot of things that have happened. People have been really isolated. Wouldn't it be an amazing moment for us to kind of pierce that by doing something that really no other platform, social media, startup company has ever really done, is reaching out to individuals with a phone call saying, hey, we want to encourage you, we want to support you by praying for you over the phone, and just instilling some hope into your what may look like a hopeless situation for you. So we talked around the idea over the past probably 6 months, and then about 4 months ago, we were able to solidify how it looked from a development side and building it out, and then hired some people and said, come on board, this is what you're going to be doing, and it's been testimony after testimony of people not only amazed at getting a phone call from us, but also asking if we can call their friends and family as well, just to spend a moment with them. Because I think people are desperate in this moment for a point of connection, and that's really what we're offering. So
that's really that's really touching. And Heather, can you think of any, I don't know, outreach that you've done or that you've heard personally about that really touches you?
Sure. You know, we had a campaign owner who was going through cancer treatment, and he was documenting it on YouTube. So every day he would go on and document what he was feeling like and give encouragement to his followers, his family, whoever's watching his YouTube video. And he started one day talking about how he woke up and he wasn't feeling well, and he was grumpy, and he had a doctor's appointment, and he really just didn't want to go to the doctor because he knew they were going to just tell him bad news, and he just was just in a foul mood. And then the video cuts, and he's sitting in a parking lot, and he says, guys, you won't believe what just happened. I just got a phone call from a stranger. And this is our stranger, a GiveSendGo stranger, calling him. And he said, I just got a phone call from a stranger, someone who doesn't know me. And they offered to pray for me. And he's like, and then when he prayed for me, he prayed that the doctors would have wisdom. And he prayed for my body. And he prayed for all these different things. And he's like, and it changed my whole mindset. I went in going to this doctor's appointment feeling like the doctors were against me, and I was miserable. And he's like, and all of a sudden that just changed, and I became thankful for these doctors, and I became thankful that there was a God that could heal me, and that there was medicines out there. And it was an incredible testimony to see, like, firsthand how it changed somebody's perspective in the moment.
Jacob, I don't know if you can speak for yourself and Heather, or just yourself, but what's your own personal journey to faith? Were you born into a family of believers, or how did that come about?
Sure, yeah. Heather and I are siblings, and we did grow up in a family with a Christian upbringing. We are 2 of 12 siblings, so we were part of a large family. And yeah, 6 boys and 6 girls. It was quite the ride growing up. But my parents did instill in us from a young age a faith perspective about who Jesus is and how he wants to have a relationship with us. And I know at a point in my life, and I know at a point in Heather's life as well, that we came to a full realization of that. Because it's one thing to have knowledge given to you from somebody else, and then there's another moment where that knowledge begins to be applied, and that's the wisdom of something actually being manifest. And there was a point in my life where the knowledge that I had actually became real and developed into a relationship with a God that knows me and wants to be a part of my life and has a purpose and a plan and a hope for me. And so through that journey, which happened early on in my life, I walked it out with many struggles like everyone does. Being a Christian doesn't mean you're devoid of issues and circumstances. It just means that through it all, the promise of God is that He will be there with you. He provides you peace in the midst of those things. So I've walked it out, and we've continued to walk it out and try to share that. Having a Christian crowdfunding platform isn't a platform that says only Christians can come here, and that's somewhat of a misconception. Some people think, oh, it's only for Christians, and we've pushed back on that time and time again. No, our platform is for everybody, just like Jesus is for everybody. We want everyone to come use our platform. You may not believe in Jesus, and we're not going to shove it down your throat either, but we are just going to open you up to and expose you to the God that we know loves you and cares for you, and give you a little bit of hope in the difficult situations that you might find yourself in.
Heather, when you hear stories like that one you just told about the cancer patient, that has to do something to you. That has to bring about some sort of change in your own faith. No doubt make it stronger, but how has your own faith changed, seeing the influence and seeing the effect that you're having on other people right now?
You know, it just reminds me again and again how God is so perfect in everything He does. When we started GiveSendGo 6 years ago, little did we know that we would be in the turmoil that the country's finding itself in now, politically and with Corona and with everything else going on. We just thought we were going to be this platform that people could come on and raise money for like the good things they wanted to do in the world. But what we found is God had us start 6 years ago for such a time as this, where He was so good in knowing that people would need the hope now, that He equipped us to start this platform so that we would be available to the people that are feeling lonely and hurt and broken today in our society. And it just, once again, reminds me how faithful and good God is. And we can trust Him.
You know, I read and hear and watch reports about the things like the suicide rates of youth and businesses struggling because of this coronavirus. And, you know, Jacob, what would you like to tell people who are still in this day and age struggling from the pandemic?
Well, I would like to say that first and foremost, that in the midst of whatever situation you find yourself in, that God has offered something, a free gift, towards us in His Son, Jesus. And then from that, we then can begin to live. I know things are starting to open up, but so important is community for each one of us. And Jesus kind of said it this way when someone came to Him and said, what are the two greatest commandments? What should I do? And His response was, you love God first, recognize what He's done for you, but then you love your neighbor as yourself. You get in community. And GiveSendGo is a platform of community. You can engage with our platform. We have an amazing team of people that are responding to emails and calling out and doing all that, but also locally. Engage locally in your local communities of faith and stir each other up into that relationship again, and really take that step. And it is an active step that you have to, sometimes hard to break through, but you gotta make the decision to do that.
So, Heather, somebody listening right now who has a business or wants to start a business or is just inspired by what you guys do and how many people you touch. I know that you built this into your business model. How would you, give people advice if they want to start a similar type of campaign, if they want to build it into their own business model? How would they go about doing that?
I think that really anybody that calls themselves a Christ follower that has a business should be asking Jesus, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to respond to these things? What can I add to my business to to encourage people and not everybody has Christian in their name. You might be a plumber, and you might be a Christian. You might not call yourself the Christian plumber. We have Christian in our name, but just because Christian might not be in your business name, Christian should be in everything that you do. God doesn't want to just be like a part of your life. He wants to be involved in all of your life, and that includes your business. And I don't think there's just one, copy us and call and pray. You could do that. But I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I think God equips different people different ways. He kind of calls us in those scripture, he calls us a body. One person's the arm and one person's the leg, and we all have different functions, and he uses us accordingly. And I think for anybody going, you know what, I want to use my business, the first step is saying, I want to use my business to glorify God. Even if I am a plumber, even if I am X, Y, or Z, I'm doing this, yes, to make a living, but also to glorify God. And how can I do that? And ask God. He will show you.
I like that. Good answer. Jacob, just quickly, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, and Heather, I know completely agrees with this, but it is, part of the journey that we've been on, because GiveSendGo has really blown up, is a recognition that this company really isn't ours in the first place. This is God's company. And what he's called us to is stewardship, which is well managing of what he's entrusted us with. And so whoever is out there and they're walking the journey of building whatever God's put in front of them, whatever God's given them to steward it well. Proverbs, I love going through Proverbs because it's practical wisdom for daily living. And one of the Proverbs says, wisdom comes in a multitude of counsel. When you surround yourself with other well-balanced people in your life, you can really find wisdom to engage in these types of ideas and then walk them out. And that's what happened with GiveSendGo with this, is we engaged it with people. It wasn't, Heather and I are just two people that happen to be in a situation, but we are carried along the backs of so many other faithful people that surround us and feed into us and have a great support system. And that's why, even back to what I said earlier, engaging with people, getting into church, being involved, stop doing church on your couch like you've done for the past year, but actually get out there and start breaking back into the world again.
Well, you guys are great. Heather Wilson and Jacob Wells, thank you for coming on Bold and Blunt, but thank you so much for this inspiring work you do. I think you motivate, who knows how many, but tons of Christians to carry forth Jesus' word into action. So thank you.
And thank you for what you do, for being bold and blunt.
Oh.
That's exactly what we all
Yeah, exactly. Right. Perfect. Yes. Thank you so much, Cheryl. It was a pleasure.
Well, God bless you guys. Thank you. And I just want to mention that Jacob and Heather wrote in the Washington Times. It was posted on the online version, WashingtonTimes.com, on June 2nd. A commentary called How GiveSendGo is Applying Christian Principles to Our Business Model and Giving Hope to the Lonely. The subheadline is, During the Worst Parts of COVID-19, a call from another human being made all the difference. So if you want to hear more, if you want to read more about their personal story, go to thewashingtontimes.com and check out that piece. Again, it was June 2nd, How GiveSendGo is Applying Christian Principles to Our Business Model. Great piece, great work for Jesus. Great people to chat with today. But that's how all my guests are on Bold and Blunt. So, thank you. Thank you very much for listening. Tune in next time. And in the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay blunt.